Hi, I'm Rana from the Gluten Free Bakery, and I'm going to show you today how to use our gluten-free sourdough baking kits to make your own gluten-free sourdough bread at home. They're super easy to make. All I have here is a bowl, a spatula. I have measured out 225 ml of water, warm water, and we have a cup of water, which is going to help us with the shaping in a few minutes. So inside each of the kits, you should have the actual flour, which is a sourdough blend. Everything's already in there, you don't need to add anything else other than water to it. And you'll also find parchment sheet and a baking bag. So this is what we're actually going to be baking the dough in. So if you open that up, you'll see there is the parchment bag there and the parchment sheet which the dough's going to go onto. So we'll use those in a couple minutes. So first thing you need to do is literally just empty out all your flour into a bowl. And then next thing is to add your warm water. So the first stage of mixing, we literally just want to combine the water and the flour together. So it's just a simple mix. Start to allow the water to soak in, mix that together. It will start to look like a sort of a thick porridge texture. So there we go, that's mixed in now, so you can see that's starting to come together. So what we'll do is, once that's come together like that, sort of after a minute of mixing, we will just leave that to sit for 5 minutes. And what that'll do is allow the water to soak into the dough. You can also use an electric mixer, so if you're using an electric mixer, you can just set that for, you know, sort of a KitchenAid, that type of thing. You can just set that for a minute to mix on a slow mix. So let's say we've left that for 5 minutes. We're not going to do that now. The next stage is a vigorous mix. So this is where a mixer can come in handy, but it's perfectly fine to do it by hand as well. It's just, you know, if you want to use a mixer, it can be easier. So the idea here for a second vigorous mix is to get some air into this dough and just to give it a really, really good mix together. So we'll do that now for a minute. So you want to do this for about a minute. So let's say we've done that for a minute. It needs slightly longer than what we've done. And what this stage will help is you'll get a nicer rise with the bread. So if you don't give it a good mix, it'll still bake fine, but your crumb will be more closed and you won't get as good a rise in the bread, but it'll still be perfectly fine to eat. So, but obviously it's better if you can do that. So it doesn't actually look any different. It looks exactly the same as after the first mix. It's kind of a thick porridgey texture, quite a sticky dough. So next thing we want to do is we want to place it onto the parchment sheet. There we go. Make sure we get all the dough. And you want to shape it slightly longer and not too high because that can affect the bake, but generally you can make it whatever shape you like. You can also at this stage make this into rolls, but we'll show that in another video. But all I'm doing now is I'm basically smoothing the dough. The important step why we use this water is that because the dough is very sticky, it will stick to a spatula or whatever you're using to spoon. So what we find is keeping that wet helps a lot with smoothing. And basically, the more you smooth, the nicer your actual bread will look, but it wouldn't affect the bake at all. You'll get a nicer crust. So I'm literally smoothing it all out, creating sort of an oval-shaped loaf. Yeah, and there we go. That's all smoothing around. And then you can also spend a bit of time curving sort of the bottom of the loaf up if you want to, you know, make the loaf look a bit nicer at the end. We'll do a separate video on how to shape, so you can see that close up as well. So basically that's my loaf done. I'm not going to spend too long on that. The next stage is again optional, but you'll get a nicer looking loaf if you score it. So again, wet whatever you're going to use to score, like a knife. And instead of running it just straight across, you almost want to do it in sections and open up that loaf. So it's quite a deep score and quite an open one. So it's very different to normal dough. It's a very sticky dough. It is very different. So that's what that looks like. At this stage, you can choose to flour the loaf. You can put seeds on that. You can put whatever you like on there. Next, we are going to put it into the baking bag. So I'm just opening up the bag, you can see, and I'm going to slide the loaf into the bag. And this is what we're going to prove and bake the bread in. So that's just slid in there like that. And we're just going to seal it. And what this does is, baking in a bag like this will basically create steam. So as you're baking, the water will evaporate from the bread and get trapped inside the bag, and that'll create steam inside the bag, and you'll get a nice crust on there. So we do actually have a few alternative ways to do this if you don't want to bake with a bag, or if you're buying one of our 1 kilo bags which don't come with the parchment sheets, and we do have alternative instructions, and we can also do that on another video as well. So then you want to leave this to prove. Half an hour is fine. You can also leave it for an hour. It's not going to make a huge difference. When you leave it to prove, it will not rise like a normal loaf. You might see a marginal difference, but don't expect it to double in size because it won't do that. So we'll leave that on the side now, just at room temperature. It doesn't have to be in a proving jar or anything like that. If it is slightly hotter, the temperature of the room, you probably wanted to use slightly cooler water, but there's not really much difference that you need to do. So we'll leave that now. We've preheated the oven to 200 degrees, and we're going to bake this for 80 minutes. So when it comes out the oven, we'll show you what to do next. Right, so our loaf has now had 80 minutes in the oven. So I've taken it out, and you can either have it in the bag or so there we go, there's our loaf. Take off all the parchment. So we didn't spend too long on shaping, so you can obviously make it look a bit nicer if we spend a bit more time on shaping. So now the really important step here is to leave the bread to cool. I know it's really tempting to cut it open now, but you will get a much better result if you do leave it to cool. Leaving it to cool outside of the bag allows any excess moisture to leave the bread, and you'll get a much nicer crumb on the inside. So it's a really important step to do that. If you do then want to have the bread warm after it's cool, you can actually put it back in the oven for 5 minutes just to get it warm again, or obviously you can toast it. But it's a really important step, so we really suggest doing it. So we're going to leave that to cool, and then in a couple of hours we can enjoy our bread. We're going to be doing some more videos on how to shape the bread, how to make pizzas using our flatbread mix. You can also make crackers and a few other things, so there's more videos to come.